Hey guys, welcome back to Stop the Shunning. My name is Bethany. I'm here today with Alissa Watson. Alissa was one of Jehovah's Witnesses for 35 years. She was baptized at 13 years old into the organization. She was a fourth generation Jehovah's Witness. And then she ended up leaving the organization with her husband and two small children in 2023. So today, she's going to share her story of what it was like growing up in the Jehovah's Witnesses, and then ultimately what it was like to wake up to the indoctrination, and then ultimately the fallout, explain the fallout of leaving the organization, especially with two small children in tow, because you're expected to bring up the next generation, raise your kids as Jehovah's Witnesses. So she's going to walk us through that journey. Nice to have you on the channel today. Welcome, Alissa.
Thank you for having me, Bethany. I'm happy to be here.
Absolutely. Good to have you on. So we're going to go ahead and get right into it. Can you give us a little bit more of your background growing up in the Jehovah's Witnesses?
Yep. So I was fourth generation. My dad was first generation on his side. He has a family of seven, but he got baptized in his 20s. But my mom was fourth generation. They were or my mom's third generation. I was fourth. Very devout on my mom's side. I mean, my grandfather was like an elder pioneer into his 80s before he stepped down and dementia took over. My great grandmother was one of the anointed, I guess. um, I had a huge family. Like both sides of my family were big, but my mom's side with all the Jehovah's Witnesses was just huge and all very devout. I mean, I had cousins that served in Bethel and need graders and you name it. And yeah, that's kind of my background. I have one sister who's older than me. And, we were like 3.5 years apart. We both were kind of rebellious teenagers, like I think most Jehovah's Witnesses are. And we kind of had our ups and downs as teenagers, that much to my mother's dismay, because she wanted the perfect JW children that wanted to pioneer and married servants or whatever. And she didn't quite get that one, but what are you going to do about that, right? So, yeah.
Okay, so
Oh, go ahead.
no, can you tell us a little bit what you mean by being a rebellious teenager? And then also, can you explain to the audience, maybe somebody who's tuning in for the first time and thinks Jehovah's Witnesses are just like church, like can you explain what it's like growing up in the
Yeah.
Jehovah's Witnesses, like a standard routine for you
Yeah.
and your family?
Okay. So when I was young, I grew up obviously in the 90s, and we still had two midweek meetings. We had, the book study, and we had the others. I don't remember what it was called, the service meeting, I think is what it is. Anyways, so yeah, I was in public school. So you're in school, you come home on Tuesdays and Thursdays, knowing that you have meeting that night. Those typically were like 7:30 to 9ish. You're getting home late, then having to go to school the next day. Saturday was field service, and my family was always I was told from a very young age, unless you're throwing up or you have a headache, or have a fever, you were at meetings, you were in service. So Saturday was taken up half the day going out in service. And then Sundays you would wake up and go to meeting again. So it was all encompassing. This wasn't just, every few Sundays you would go because you felt the need to go worship. You were literally, it was your lifestyle. And you in school couldn't celebrate holidays. You couldn't celebrate birthdays. You're supposed to keep distance from all the kids because they're worldly and they're bad association. And it was hard. It's so hard being a JW child because you every kid wants to fit in and every kid wants to be accepted, but you're not allowed to. You're supposed to be the different kid, the one that keeps the distance from everyone. I remember in like middle school doing reports that I would stand up in front of my class about why I don't celebrate holidays. Those were like so horrible, but I was trying to be that good Jehovah's Witness child. You mentioned I was baptized at 13. I did that purely because I knew it was, I don't know, there's no written thing that's like, if you're not baptized by 18, something's wrong with you. But it's a very, very well known thing. Like, even if you're like 16 and not baptized, it's like, what's going on with them? Like, why haven't they made the truth their own? So at 13, I got baptized. And then after that, I homeschooled because I was terrified of getting in trouble. I was boy crazy. I was a typical teenage girl from a small town that there's like nothing to do. And that's when the rebellion kind of kicked in. I was so isolated homeschooling, and I just had my two like girl best friends that I kind of grew up with in my small town I grew up in. And we just were rebellious. We would drink whenever we could and kissing boys and all that stuff when we could. And I got into trouble when I was 17 with my now husband because I was sneaking him into a house. I was house sitting and drinking with him and his buddies. And I mean, it's normal teenage behavior, kind of push your boundaries. But as a Jehovah's Witness, it's literally like you could get disfellowshipped for this. You could get excommunicated and lose everything. My sister was kind of the same. We were just small town drinking with at little like house parties. And, that was about the extent of my rebellion. So, yeah.
What I what I find interesting is that you said so you got baptized at 13. Correct me if I'm wrong. You got baptized at 13 and then you were homeschooled.
Yeah.
Okay, and then you became rebellious.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
can you explain to the audience a little bit more, just kind of elaborate or flesh it out a little bit more, what that's like? You mentioned the pressure to get baptized in the Jehovah's Witnesses, because I think a lot of Christian denominations or people who come from like quote, for lack of a better word, normal churches, kind of think of like, oh, you're saved. You get baptized, you're saved. And, I have Jesus in my heart, and it's very simple. But with Jehovah's Witnesses, it's like your whole, like they own you now. It's a contract. So can you walk through maybe the pressure that you felt as a young person to get baptized, and how you kind of like, and how it led to rebellion once you were really isolated, because you're isolated enough as a Jehovah's Witness. Could you explain a little bit more of those early years leading up to your baptism?
Yeah. So I think obviously as a Jehovah's Witness kid, there's not a whole lot you do that gets praise. Like you could be an amazing student in school. They don't care because to them, education is not necessary because the end is coming. You don't need to be educated for that. Um, you could just be a great kid, a kind kid, a respectful kid, and you're still not getting the praise. What gets you praise is doing stuff in the organization. So for me, I think I was around 11 when I started seeing the kids around me getting baptized. My sister, I think, got baptized at 15. So I would have been like 12 when that happened. And just seeing how people fawned over her when she was going through the baptismal questions, which for those that don't know, you literally have like two sets of really long questions they go through to basically test you to see if you have enough knowledge on the religion, as well as that you kind of understand what you're doing, which you really don't. You don't understand that you're literally signing your life away to this organization. They tell you that you are making your commitment to God for the rest of your life, and you're not allowed to back out of that, which is like, you're a child. You can't get legally married. You can't sign any contracts. You can't buy a house. You can't do anything as a child. And yet they're telling you, you get baptized and you are forever stuck in that organization, or you deal with consequences. So as an 11-year-old, I was watching people get baptized around me and seeing the praise they were getting. And I wanted to make my parents happy. And I knew my mom is a very devout Jehovah's Witness, like over the top kind of devout Jehovah's Witness, where she tried to pioneer even when we were babies and loved to remind us that we kind of stopped her pioneering career by her getting pregnant. Sorry, not my fault, but and I just wanted to make her happy. So I was like, okay, I can get baptized when I'm 13. I was always kind of that like overachiever child. Like in school, if I didn't get an A, I was failing in my head, that kind of mentality. So I was like, I'm going to get baptized at 13 because my sister got baptized at 15. I'm going to show that I'm more spiritual than her. But then it's like the reality hit. And I was like, oh my gosh, I could literally, because at that point, 13 is when your hormones start raging. And I'm like, oh my gosh, boys are so cute. I want to have a boyfriend. And it's like, oh my God, I could get disfellowshipped. I could lose everyone. My parents could kick me out of the house. And it was just like, almost like I think a panic mode hit when I got about 14. So like a year after I got baptized. And that was why I like begged to homeschool, because I was like, I can't be a public school. I can't. I know I'll get in trouble. And it's just dumb.
You said so much that resonated with me, as a teenage girl, because we were both born in the 80s. Okay.
Mhm.
Okay. Growing up in the organization, Man, there's so many things that resonated with me as a young teenage girl. In fact, they just put out, did you see the new music video that the organization put
No,
out?
I haven't. I need to look at it. I've like heard it in the background. My husband's watched it. I haven't watched it
Okay.
yet. I need to, yeah.
But several things that you mentioned about your experience and how it's just natural, like there's these natural things that you experience, your hormones are kicking in and you want to have these normal experiences. And I'm not saying all experiences are good experiences, but man, the witnesses raise you in such an isolated, unrealistic, unnatural environment that you just feel like you're gonna like it's just you feel like you're gonna snap. And that's similar to what the music video that the organization just produced. I actually just did a video on it today that I put out commenting on it because it's just because there's so much pressure on young women specifically. There's a lot of pressure on young men in the organization to assume roles of responsibility, be an elder, which is like a deacon or pastor or whatever in other denominations. But teenage girls or young women in the organization, that's a whole other video. We could go on and on about that. But there's so much pressure. It's not just a matter of you can just fumble
Yeah.
and kind of explore like your non-Jehovah's Witness peers and kind of make mistakes and have some whatever, some embarrassing little memories here and there or some good memories here and there. It's like if you kiss a boy, oh my God, you could lose everything. Or it lead you down a path that your own family is going to disown you and shun you. And that people don't really understand how deeply embedded that sort of, for lack of a better word, slut shaming culture of the Jehovah's Witnesses. I mean, there's probably another term that I could use, but you know, you're dirty, you're the girl, you screwed up. Whereas their male counterparts tend to get off in more ways than one. Proceed. So what happened after or in
Yeah.
those high school years?
So I got baptized in like at a convention when I was 13. And then that following school year, so just like a few months later, I was like begging, please, please, please let me homeschool. And my parents are kind of like, well, you're responsible for that. If you can do it, you can, whatever, that's fine. We'll allow it. And obviously with homeschooling, again, that perfectionist mentality, I'm like, I would wake up early in the morning, I would get my school done for the day. And then I had like literally all day long. So I would start planning stuff with my friends, and then I had my license within like a couple years, and I would like go do stuff with them. The weird thing kind of about my family, so like the purity culture is so harmful to me. I hate it. I think it's so wrong. I remember being riddled with guilt as like a sixth grader because I had my first boyfriend at school, and we literally would hold hands, and then I'd go home and be like, oh my goodness, I made Jehovah so sad that I did that. And it's like, you're holding hands. Like we wouldn't even speak to each other. So, anyways, my parents would always allow us to like have Jehovah's Witness boys over to hang out with us. And they would always do like get togethers with the young ones at our house. And it was like, I was kind of feeling like I would get these mixed signals. Like, you can't look at these boys. You're not old enough. Let me rewind it for a second. Jehovah's Witnesses say you don't date, you don't casually date, you only date with marriage in mind. So you are not dating before you can potentially get married, which is as an adult 18 years old, which you're still not ready then, but whatever. Um, so I'm being told you can't date these people. You can't really even like look at them or like them because what if that leads you down a road of sin? But let's put them in front of you all the time. Let's have them over. Let's have movie nights in our basement. Let's do this. And it's like, I'm confused. Like at the time, there was this little boy I liked that I was like, oh, I'm going to marry him. I'm going to marry this boy. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's so silly. I was like 15 at the time. But I just think that pressure as a Jehovah's Witness child, it's almost like my husband and I always say it's like a spring that's being pushed down from the age that you can even start walking. And the second that that spring even slips, like your finger slips a little bit off of it, you're going haywire because you're just like, you have been so repressed and so like sheltered. And I mean, it's too much pressure for a child to live that way. So, yeah, I was that spring. I got a little freedom once I got my license. It was just like, I'm going haywire. I'm doing whatever I want. Looking back, it still wasn't, well, the underage drinking was horrible, but at the same time, that's like small town vibes. I feel like that just happens. But it was like this is what normal kids do. And it's like they talk to their parents, and their parents are like, well, that was a really stupid mistake, but learn from it, move on. There's not the added layer of like, well, now you have to go sit in front of three elders and confess everything you did. That's terrifying as a child. I hated that. And I've been in too many elders meetings to like to have too much with that. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's the most traumatic thing to go through as a child, especially, but even as an adult.
Absolutely. Again, traumatic also as a teenage girl because you are it is a misogynistic organization and you are sitting in a room with three older men. Like, hello, how inappropriate because there's no women in positions of leadership that could sit in the room or maybe have your back or see it from your perspective. So I'm sorry you dealt with that, but that definitely describes the experience of, so I know that there's going to be people watching this being like, yup, me too. You know, I went through that too, being in judicial hearings. So in your teenage years, you're rebelling. And then, so what happens? How did you said you got married at 19 or 18, or you met your husband at that age?
I met my husband when I was 17. So we met when I was just barely 17. And then we kind of witness dated or like didn't fully date until I was like 18, even though we were talking all the time and meeting up and whatnot. We got in trouble within like the first 4 months of us meeting because we were just like, I mean, we were so attracted to each other. We loved each other. And I was like, hey, I'm house sitting. Come stay with us for the week. Like, it's not a big deal. But yeah, then we got married when I was 19. And when we got married, I think about this all the time. I'm like, oh my gosh, I was still such a baby. If my daughter came to me tomorrow as a 19-year-old saying she's getting married, I'd be like, no, you're not. Wait, just wait. But as a Jehovah's Witness, it's normal. I mean, people get married 18, 19, 20. I feel like if you're in your early 20s, it's like considered being like so mature and old to be getting married. It's insane. So yeah, we dated, and much to my parents' dismay, we were like we were like magnets. There was nothing they could do to keep us apart. And they finally, once I turned 18, I remember having a conversation with them that was like, because they didn't like my husband. They thought he was the bad boy. He was the perfect example of the like rebellious bad boy that he was out doing stuff he wasn't supposed to do. And like I was this little teenage girl. I was like, oh my gosh, he's so cute. And my parents tried to keep us apart. And at 18, I was like, if you don't let me date him, I'll just elope with him. And they were like, whoa, okay. So they allowed us to date for until we got married. It's crazy.
Well, it's like you said, Jehovah's Witnesses, both the women, young women and men, are so sexually repressed. I think you mentioned it earlier, like the way you put it. You said like, most families, or like let's you have a Jehovah's Witness family and then you have like a pretty balanced, reasonable non-Jehovah's Witness family. And they say, hey, you did this thing, you screwed up. Yeah, it was stupid, but we still love you. Hopefully you learn from this experience. There's possibly physical consequences, emotional consequences. That sets young people up for success down the line, except Jehovah's Witnesses are the opposite. Everything is just guilt and shame them and hope they don't do it. And it's like you're going against your biology. You have all this indoctrination and purity culture and shame shoved onto you. And it's such a bad mix. And like you said, when you're 19, you're baby. I think I'm not a scientist. I think somebody like can correct me out there, but I think your brain's not fully formed till you're like 25. So,
I think it's the frontal lobe, the decision-making part of your brain. So
yeah.
it's like you shouldn't be making any decisions till you're 25, any life-changing decisions. But
And
yeah,
and also too, you mentioned earlier about how you got baptized at 13 years old. Who can you cannot vote. I've said this before, vote, drink, drive, or get married. Most places. At at 13 years old, let alone you don't have the developmental capacity to consent to a religious or political ideology for the rest of your life. So that's how people don't look at Jehovah's Witnesses and just think, oh, kind of goofy, fuddy-duddy, or like quirky, nice religious. Like, no, 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 you don't know how dangerous
so
this,
dangerous.
this group is and how they're screwing up kids' brains and trapping them young. It's not a baptism, Alissa. We know it's a traptism.
Yes, 100%.
Yes. So, anyways, When did you start, now that you've kind of taken us through your youth and those your wild small town teenage years, and then just kind of the headspace. I like the way you described everything, the headspace of a Jehovah's Witness teenager and how it's just like that spring. And other people might look at it and go, "Oh, well, this sounds extreme," but it's like, but when you grow up in the witnesses, you do feel like you're about to snap. What happened like in your 20s after you got married? Like when did you start? Did you really, I mean, I like to ask people this, did you really internalize it as the truth? Did you really just carry it as the truth and believe it was the one true religion? Or were you harboring doubts secretly? And how long did that take and what did that look like?
Yeah, so I didn't have any doubts until like the very end of us leaving. I always fully believed it was the truth. I just thought I wasn't a good witness because I struggled so much from the day we were married. So that was like my first time out of the house ever. I moved from my parents' basement to an hour away, like the big city with my husband. And I was working full time for the first time in my life. I was commuting for the first time in my life. I was trying to become a wife as a 19-year-old child. And so for us, we got married and it was just like meetings, service, all of that was so on the back burner because we were just trying to figure out marriage and like for me, like an entirely different life from I've ever lived, working, commuting, living in a bigger city. We were partying more because it was like finally freedom to do whatever the heck we wanted to do. And so I always just had this horrible guilt. Like I'm a terrible witness. I believe it's the truth. I hope Jehovah can see my heart. I'd always had that thought. I hope he can see my heart. I do love him. I do love this religion. I can't get there. I don't know what's wrong with me. So we went through ups and downs our whole marriage. It was like we would get a convention would happen. I feel like this was everyone. And you would get that like spiritual high and you're like, we're going to get this together. We're going to really focus on this. And you would come out of that and you were at every meeting and commenting and studying and preparing and out in service. And then you would kind of fall off till the next convention. And that's kind of what our whole marriage life was. And then I got to be like late 20s and we started thinking about children. We were like, I think we do actually want to have kids. We originally got married like, oh, we're not having kids in this system like every witness couple usually does. And we were having fun traveling and just doing what we wanted to do. So it was like not even on the radar. And then once I hit about 26, that like feeling of wanting to be a mom hit me. And so we were like, okay, we got to really focus in. Like, we can't have kids if we are still not making the truth our own and doing what we're supposed to do. So I tried to pioneer. I pioneered for a year and went to pioneer school. I hated every second of it. And I was like, what is wrong with me? Everyone says this should be the most amazing way I feel. And I'm just over here like dying inside every morning, having to go out in service. Um, my husband never really wanted to reach out. Like he didn't love the idea of being a servant or an elder. He just was like, my focus should just be you. And once we have kids, my kids, like everything else can wait. So we tried, and it wasn't until, which maybe there were deep rooted doubts that I was kind of pushing away. And that's why I like had a really hard time committing to this religion. I don't know. But my husband woke up before I did and he stopped attending meetings. And that was when I kind of started having doubts, just seeing some of the stuff happening. I was like, this is kind of weird. The blood doctrine actually is what made me start having doubts.
Okay, so can you tell us more about that?
Yeah.
Explain the blood doctrine and the no blood transfusion policy to anyone who's watching who doesn't know.
Okay. So as a Jehovah's Witness, like every year you're supposed to fill out a medical durable power of attorney that has a giant picture on the front that says no blood. You keep it on you at all times. Jehovah's Witnesses claim that it's in the Bible that taking a blood transfusion is against biblical standards, which is so silly when you actually look at the scripture they use for that. It has nothing to do with that. It's about ingesting blood. It was animal sacrifices and all that stuff. It doesn't matter. So I was always had my blood card on me, always filled it out every year. But when I got pregnant with my first baby, elders will give you like this printout when they find out you're pregnant. That is literally like reminding you of things you can't do while you're pregnant. So like the blood, you don't do blood. It's like the first paragraph is like, blood is wrong. Remember that. Like, make sure your medical durable power attorney is updated with your doctor and in their system. And just all these things. They remind you about the hospital liaison committee if something comes up in your pregnancy that you were in the hospital, like just all this stuff. It's insane that they think that's acceptable in any way, because it's like pregnancy is scary enough, like without that added stress of like, oh yeah, forget I can't, I'll die. Don't worry, I'll die. So with my daughter, we were the perfect Jehovah's Witnesses. We had my medical power of attorney like updated, and at the doctor's office, we went through. They have like videos and information on JW.org that's like, here are the blood fractions you can accept. And it's like cell saver machine and this and that. I think hemoglobin, I don't even know what it is. But we went through the whole thing and we wrote out a detailed, like extra sheet we added to my durable power of attorney of everything we were like, we would be okay with if something happened during my pregnancy. And in labor at the hospital, my doctor was like, are you sure that you're comfortable not having blood? Like, there's a lot of blood loss that can happen in labor and delivery. Like, if you have to have an emergency C-section, like things can go very bad very quickly when it comes to labor and delivery. And we were just like, yes, that's what we're saying. But something started clicking in her brain that's like, this is weird. Like, I'm willing to sacrifice my life or my child's life for something that just doesn't fully make sense to us. So after that is when my husband did some research and he shared it with me. And then when I was pregnant with my second, he was like, I don't feel comfortable with this anymore. And I agreed with him. I took my durable power of attorney off of my doctor's like notes and everything. I said, get rid of this. Like, if in the case of emergency, I will take blood. This is no longer something I believe in. And that was before I even really woke up. But I was just like, I can't do this. I won't sacrifice my life for my children's. And that was just kind of the snowball that started everything to us waking up. Because it was just like, if we don't believe in this core doctrine and we can't back this core doctrine, what else do we not believe in? And that started everything.
Wow. Yeah, that's because, yeah, if you're a witness, you don't mess with blood. Like, this is not like yeah, like they'll come like the hospital mafia to your bedside. Wow. So yeah, I had a friend when I was a teenager. Well, I should say I was probably like a preteen. I was probably like 11 or 12, and her mother started hemorrhaging 1 month. And I remember, I mean, I was young, but I remember her and her siblings were just all in shock, and they lost their mother within days. Like, she just had some rare blood disorder, and she did not accept blood, and they lost their mother, and they were all like 11, 13, and 15 or something. It was absolutely devastating. The congregation was devastated. I remember visiting at the hospital and I remember, and that it didn't even happen to me, Alissa. It didn't even happen to me, but I remember seeing this family had to like band together. All to say, it was devastating to watch, let alone be put in that position, like you know, having to worry about this and having to come to that conclusion. Wow. So after that, you were questioning well, that was like, okay, whatever. We're not screwing with this. I'm going to protect my child. I'm not going to die. My child's not going to die. That takes that takes some serious courage. Something else I'd say, but it sounds crass. That takes some serious, yeah. So after that, what else started to hit you? You said that was kind of like the thing that snowballed. So what happened after that? And that was after your second child?
That was my second, yeah.
Your second child. So kind of what happened after that? How did the doubts start to snowball?
Okay, so obviously, in the midst of all this, my first baby was born during COVID, or like right before COVID hit. So everything shut down. And we got so used to being on Zoom. Once our second was born, we went back to like in person again when he was like 6 weeks old. And we were just like, we were in the trenches. We had two kids under 3. I was like not sleeping. The baby was like always crying. He was not a happy baby. So we were like never at meetings. We only did Zoom, and we would literally log on for background noise pretty much. And so that people saw us there. And I feel like getting that distance and then seeing the way people treated us, where it was just like I was barraged constantly with text messages like, we miss you. Are you okay? My mother-in-law would offer to take our oldest. And I'm like, no. Like, and I would just always be like, yeah, we're good. We just have tiny children. Like I was very strict on sleep schedules when they were little. So I'm like, they were in bed at like 7 o'clock. That's when meeting is starting. I am not taking them to that. And like their nap time is usually right in the middle of a Sunday meeting. So I'm not taking them to that. And I was just like, I feel like that kind of warm, fuzzy feeling that we would used to get from the congregation just went away during COVID and never came back. And I was just like, this it doesn't feel like it should feel. And then my husband started, unbeknownst to me, was researching stuff. And he was in his deconstruction process like a year before I even woke up. And he just really distanced himself. He started growing a beard, which at the time, that beards were not acceptable yet at that time. He like was working with a family business and he stopped working with them, and they live like a mile from us. So like it was really weird to see him pulling back, and I was like, what is going on? What's happening? And he finally opened up to me after like I kind of tried to, I think my son was like 6 months old. I'm like, okay, I got to get us back to meetings. Like something is going on. We got to get us there. And he wasn't going. He was like refusing to go. He wasn't being mean about it, but he would just like find busy work when I'm getting ready to leave. And I'm like, are you coming? And he'd be like, oh, no, not today. And he finally told me what he had discovered. And he shared with me ARC, the Australian Royal Commission. And he said he had found some other stuff, but he didn't want to like share everything with me because he didn't want me to feel overwhelmed. He just wanted me, if I felt the need to get kind of in his headspace why he didn't want to go to meetings anymore, to just look at the ARC stuff. And I did in the middle of the night while I was like nursing my baby. I was looking, like reading through some of the transcripts. And it literally was, and I say this a lot, like in my videos, I've said this a lot, where it's literally like a light bulb. And I'm like, I'm done. People always are like, there's no way it was just that simple. I'm like, no, it was that simple. It took Jeffrey Jackson on stand saying that he didn't believe that they were the only like spokespeople for God. And it was like, okay, so if you don't believe it, why should I believe it? And why am I listening to you? Like, why? And that was it. I was done after that.
It was the same for me. So you and I probably woke up around the same time. I'm glad you brought that up. Can you explain a little bit more about the arc?
Yes.
That sounds weird. The arc situation.
Yeah. So it was a big investigation in Australia into like all churches, all anything that dealt with children. It was like youth groups or anything, camps, that kind of stuff, to see how they handled basically child abuse, CSA, and Jehovah's Witnesses. Obviously, were one of the people or the groups investigated, and there was, I think, like 1,006 cases that had been documented by elders meetings and elder stuff, like, but never reported to actual authorities in Australia. So it came out that like they had, and this was just Australia. So I'm thinking, if this is just Australia, where that number is like in the thousands, like what else is happening? What's happening in the States? What's happening in the UK? Like this is obviously an issue. And Jeffrey Jackson, one of the governing body members, was, I guess, trying to dodge being subpoenaed. But I heard like he was visiting Australia to visit parents, and the courts found out and subpoenaed him while he was there. So he was forced to sit down. And in his interview, like, not only did he admit, like, yes, I guess we do kind of have a systematic issue with child abuse and not reporting it, but then he was asked outright, so you believe, as like the governing body members, which he's one of the leaders of this organization, that we look to as Jehovah's Witnesses, that you would look to them as the spokespeople for God, the people who are passing down information that they're getting from God to the other sheep in the flock congregations. They asked him, so you think you are spokespeople to God, and you think you're the only spokespeople on earth? And he's like, well, that would be presumptuous to say we're the only ones. And when he said that, I literally had a visceral reaction where I was just like, I don't believe you anymore. Like, I will never believe a word that comes out of your mouth, because you just admitted on stand that you don't think that you are what you claim to be, which you weren't lying. You're telling the truth. But to a Jehovah's Witness, it was like, but you've told us all these years. That's why we listen to you. That's why we follow your rules. That's why we don't take blood and people die every year. Like, it was insane. And then on top of that, as a mom, I'm seeing these cases of CSA happening, and they're not protecting the children. like not only the kids within the congregation, but even like outside children. Like you're not reporting it to authorities, so their next door neighbor could be a victim of this person. Like that's sick. I'm a mom. I don't trust anyone. I will never trust anyone in this organization again because what if elder so and so has just been shifted around all these years and has a problem? Like, absolutely not. My kids will never step foot in Kingdom Hall. And that's exactly what I told my husband. I'm like, our children will never go there again. I will never take them back. We're done.
Okay. No, thank you for elaborating on the Australian Royal Commission because that too, to me, when Jeffrey Jackson said that, I was like, "Are you insane?" From infancy, I'm told I'm the chosen, that Jehovah's Witnesses are the chosen one true religion, and you're telling me it would be presumptuous of us to assume that we're the only mouthpiece for God? Like, are you insane? So yeah, I can't. I got to bring my blood pressure down. Um,
I
it's just like I was just like reliving it with you, but yeah, exactly. No, thank you for rehashing that for somebody who might be watching this for the first time and isn't aware of all these little details. And I respect the hell out of you for telling your husband and for saying I'm done because I don't want to expose my children to this. Can you please take us from this point forward, how you eventually left the organization and what was the fallout when you finally decided in your heart and in your gut, you know what, I'm done and my kids are not being raised in this? Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah. So I woke up in that was like December of 2022. So my baby was like 8 months old when that was all going down. And we had that conversation after I saw that stuff. And we were like, okay, so we were done with meetings. Like we're done. We did try like a circuit assembly like a few months later. My husband had a full on panic attack. So we stayed for like an hour and left because he was just like, I feel physically ill being here, like knowing the reality of this religion. Um, and so we did not go to another meeting. We were dodging family pretty much. So like my family was an hour away. They didn't know what was happening. My in-laws were in the same congregation as us, my brother-in-law and his wife and their kids. So they were witnessing us like not going at all, like not making an attempt, not logging onto Zoom. Like we started distancing ourselves from them because we knew in our heads, like there's no circumstance where we're going to keep family. Like we're not staying in this from the really early on, we kind of knew we were going to disassociate because we wanted to be able to have a fully clean break for our children. We didn't want to play the half in, half out game. We had conversations very early on, like, okay, so we pretend and fake it for our parents until they die 20 to 30 years. We have grown kids then. What if one of our kids takes into like wants to become a really great witness to like appease family? They get married in the organization and then they're forced to shun their sibling or their parents or all of us. Like that's not happening. Our other option was to fade and just hope people would leave us alone. But then we felt like we were telling our kids to lie and live a double life, which would be like, yeah, we can celebrate holidays and birthdays. You can be a normal kid at school, but don't tell your grandparents. Don't tell them what we're doing because they'll be upset at us. I'm not doing that to my children. Like, absolutely not. Because then what happens when they're teenagers and living double lives? That's on me. That's my fault that I like showed them that's acceptable. So we knew pretty early on our only chance to get completely free of it was to disassociate. For those that don't know, disassociating is when you literally have to write a letter saying, I am no longer one of Jehovah's Witnesses. Take me off of everything. Like, I'm not a member of this congregation anymore or this organization. It's the only way you can get a really free and clear break from that organization. So we knew that was going to come. We just were trying to figure out timing. So, like, my nephew was graduating high school, and I was like, I don't want to like leave before that. And like, I don't know. We were trying to figure everything out. It's a hard thing to do when you're like, you have all these moving parts. You have parents and siblings and nieces and nephews. You're trying to like, it's going to be crappy for everyone, no matter what. But it was about 8 months of us like fading, not going to meetings, distancing ourselves from parents and family. And then once I'm trying to think. Okay, so I broke my ankle in all of this time frame, had to have surgery. So I was like trying to take care of my kids. My mom and dad were coming down to help more because like I needed it especially the first couple of weeks when I was like in pain and dealing with all of that. Um, with in the back of my head this whole time, like going like, oh, like this isn't going to continue. Like this is going to be over with soon. And um, we had a conversation around the district convention, the summer conventions that were coming up, and which one we were going to. Since I had broken my ankle and had surgery like 2 weeks before when ours was going to happen, and I'm in my head going like, none of them, we're not going. And my mom was like, well, you can come to ours in August, like a couple months later. And I was like, no, I don't think we're going to do that. And she was like, why are you not going to the convention? I was like, because I'm not going and I'm not taking my kids to that. And it was an instant, like Jehovah's Witnesses have these like triggers that they are built into them. She looked at me and said, do you not believe this is the truth anymore? Like out of nowhere. And I was like, okay, Lissa, here's your chance. You can either be truthful and be honest, and this is going to be the point that you're like, okay, well, we've been planning for this for months and it's happening, or you can lie and try to bide more time. And I was like, I'm just being honest. So I was like, no, I don't. I'm like, this organization is not what it claims to be. I have evidence to back that. I'm not going to share that with you because I feel it's not my place, but I would suggest you look at that. That's what I told my mom. And it was just like, that was it. Like tears and my dad trying to read me scriptures and I need to go to the elders and I'm spiritually sick and just all of that was happening. And again, we had already written up a disassociated letter like months before. And it was kind of like, okay, well, it's officially time. Like this is not going to go any way but really bad. And it's time to take back our power. So we sent her a letter like a week later. And we had some very heated conversations with family that were like, we are loyal. This is what every Jehovah's Witness says. If you're watching this, you know this. We are loyal to Jehovah over everything else. You realize this means we will never speak to you again. And I said, that's on you. Like, that's not what I want, but that's on you. So we lost everyone in a matter of like a day from like turning in the letter to that happening. And we tried after we disassociated to like, we reached out, I think it was like 6 weeks after that all happened. We let the dust settle a little bit and we reached out to both sets of parents saying, like, we didn't do this to be spiteful or mean or to keep our kids from you. We didn't do that. We still would love if you could be in our lives just as parents and grandparents. So we set up boundaries of like, let's meet in a neutral place that's comfortable for everyone. You can shun me and Lance, my husband, 365 days a year, but for 2 hours that you're around my children, you pretend things are normal. Hug us, talk to us, pretend it's normal. And they couldn't do that. We tried twice with both sets of parents, and it was insane. Like, I would leave an emotional wreck, and I'm like, this isn't worth it. My babies were young. My baby was a year and a half, barely. My other little girl, she was like 2.5. So I'm like, she was almost 3. I'm like, we as the adults in this situation can handle taking basically the knife to the back over our children. So we kind of just said, this can't happen. It's not going to happen. And yeah, we've been dealing with it for now 2 years with them not speaking to us. And thankfully, our kids don't have memory of it. Our daughter did a little bit in the beginning, would ask why she wasn't seeing her Nana and Bampa and this stuff. But like, she's honestly, I think she's forgotten. I don't even think she would know them if we like ran into them in public, which thankfully hasn't happened yet. But it's been rough.
I'm so sorry. I'm I'm both sorry for your loss because no one should, because it is a loss. No one should experience this. I've been shunned for 8 years because I also disassociated. So I can relate to everything you're saying. I'm sorry that you went through that. Disassociation specifically, because Jehovah's Witnesses, as you mentioned before, like you can fade and kind of play the game and like kind of appease family and do that. And we understand, you and I understand, Alissa, why people do that. There's landmines that the organization has set up on by design, has sort of quarantined you in this community and isolated you from other networks or systems of support. So it's designed to be really bad when you finally leave. So I'm sorry you went through that. You can do fading, you can play that game. And again, I understand why people do it. You get sometimes people just get disfellowshipped, they get kicked out against their it wasn't of their own volition. They get kicked out, and that's a whole thing. But disassociation, I've described it as a sort of blunt force trauma. Because really, it's just like, oh no, we're done. And but what I appreciate is that you said, look, the door's open on my end. I still want us to have a relationship. If you can be respectful and be decent human beings, we won't have a problem. But if you can't, that's on you. So I know I sound like a broken record. I'm sorry you went through that, but I have mad respect for you. And I know other people watching this who went through similar circumstances will have mad respect for you and your husband for protecting your children from this organization, even though temporarily right now it sucks and there's a cost. You've paid a very heavy price for your freedom, but your children are now protected from what you and I went through. The indoctrination, the brainwashing. You broke the cycle. And again, just mad respect for you for that. So you did that. It's been 2 years. And do you ever see your family out and about? What was there any residual fallout that you're still dealing with? Anything like that?
Yeah. So, unfortunately, we live a mile from my in-laws and my brother-in-law and sister-in-law. So I see them a lot out and about just running errands. Um, we have like a super Target like 2 minutes away from here that I'm constantly at, and I've seen them there many times. In the beginning, also like people that were in the congregation we were in. I don't see my parents because again, they're like an hour away. My problem with them has been more so my dad will have these moments of I feel like he might have he gets lucid and he's like, well, this feels wrong. And he'll reach out to me, like saying he wants to meet me for coffee and talk. And then it's like radio silence for months on end. And I'm just like, I've gotten to the point. Well, I also upset him. So let me rewind a little bit. We left in July of 2023. We tried for a couple months to like have some sort of relationship with them and let them have a chance to show us that they could be parents and not just like Jehovah's Witness drones. I started speaking out on social media vocally in like December. So it was a few months after everything with my parents. And it was very obvious, like nothing was going to happen. I always say this, I would never would have spoken out had we been able to have some form of relationship with our parents, purely for like respect for their religion. But when that was like obviously not the case, I'm like, screw this. I'm going to start talking and speaking and like hopefully give people somewhere they can feel validated in their feelings. And my dad found that and he was like, how could you do this to us? And I was like, I'm just sharing my experience. If your religion looks bad, that's on them. Like, that's not my fault that they treat people this way.
It's so narcissistic. It's all about them. Just generally speaking, it's always about them and their hurt and their pain, and it's our fault. That's how the cults set it up. And then also too, I like what you just said. Like your religion. What did Jehovah's Witnesses like to quote? I've distanced myself so much from this, so I don't remember the exact scripture. I know somebody out there who's an avid Bible reader will know what I'm talking about. But by your fruits, or not by a tree's fruits, you will know if it's a good tree or a bad tree or whatever. And they used to apply that, right? To the witnesses. The witnesses used to apply that to themselves of like, our fruits. Look, we preach all over the world. We're such good people. We're so holy. So the fruits of our and then when you're like, no, you have CSA cases, you've murdered people through your no blood transfusion policy, the shunning policy is killing people. People's lives are just boring, just super boring, haven't met certain developmental milestones. People are sexually repressed and depressed and they're dealing with like mental health crisis. Those are the fruits from your tree. And I'm just speaking truth. It's nothing personal against you. I love you, mom and dad, but I'm not putting up with this BS anymore and I'm protecting my kids. Again, I know I keep coming back to that, but I really appreciate that about you, that you saw your kids' future and were like, oh, no, 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 I'm not putting this on repeat.
Like you kind of mentioned, it is like blunt force trauma when you disassociate and you leave that way. But we knew, my husband's 41, I'm 37 now. Like We are old enough that we have ways we can deal with this. We have tools we know that can help us. Therapy, if we are so depressed, medication, whatever it might be, we can get through this. Those babies cannot. Their little brains cannot comprehend that amount of trauma. And I'm not putting that on my children. Like, I kind of likened it to like a huge hailstorm hits and there's this tiny little closet out in the middle of somewhere. I'm pushing my babies in there to protect them. I will take the hail to my back and let them know that like everything's okay. Everything's okay when I'm in pain, but they're not going to know that. So as much as our families are angry at us, it's like I did this for my children. If you can't understand that, that kind of explains the parents that you guys became. And that's a problem with you and something you should look at within yourself. So it's been horrible. It gets easier seeing family. I've gotten to the point now where I get really, it's normally, I do a lot of Target drive ups because I have two kids. It's just easier than going in and hauling them in. And it's gotten to the point now when I see them, either like my sister-in-law's car is in front of me, I take pictures of her. I make her uncomfortable. I know they're terrified of us. Like they literally think we're like Satan in human form on earth. I don't care.
Good. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you. I like that you're talking about this. Can you elaborate a little bit again? Because people, when they hear about the Jehovah's Witnesses and they hear shunnings, a lot of people think of like the Amish. Like they don't associate what it means to be shunned or the disconnect. And you've touched on that, obviously, that they can't even have a relationship with you without going radio silent or freaking out or whatever, being super judgmental. But like, can you go into a few little things like that if you're okay with that? Just describing like what that means, like when you run in, how do they behave?
Yes. So every single person we've run into, including family, literally looks at you. There's a moment of panic on their face and they like turn the other way and like run from you. They are, it's ingrained in them, especially when you do what we do, where we speak out online and we are vocal apostates against, they say it's against Jehovah. No, it's against the organization, but they can't decipher the difference between calling out an organization and calling out God. I'm not calling out God. I tell my dad that all the time. I have no issues with God. My issue is this organization that is run by men that are hypocrites and horrible, but they are told, in fact, I think you've done videos on the convention part about how like apostates are Satan literally talking in Jesus's ear. We are Satan. We are Satan on earth. So they are terrified of you. It's not even that they're upset with you. They're scared of you. So they turn and run. This summer, my daughter had a dance recital and it's a pretty big dance school around here. And there are witnesses that have kids there. And we were at the recital running into people that were Jehovah's Witnesses that were in the congregation we were a part of. And they stopped dead in their tracks and are just like, they don't know how to act. I made it really uncomfortable for one of the elders. I was like, hi, how are you? And he was just like, hi. Like they panic. It's comical now. Like now that the farther I get out of it, the more comical it is. In the beginning, it was like a gut punch. Like, oh my gosh, these are people who I used to view as friends and they can't even look at my face. It's insane.
Yeah, that's what it's like to run into indoctrinated witnesses, and that's how they're just programmed to shun, and it's just heartless and cruel. And I've talked about this before on my channel and in interviews and stuff where I say I don't, if you legitimately have a problem with me, like I go against your values or your conscience and you want to give me the finger and cut me out of your life, I know that you're doing it out of your own conscience and not because it's a directive and because you're brainwashed. The problem I have, Alissa, and I'm sure you get this, is with mandated shunning. And so what your family is doing to you and what so many former Jehovah's Witnesses who are shunned are going through is this mandated shunning from the governing body, from Jeffrey Jackson and all the other members. And then it just gets passed down through the generations, the cycle. And you broke the cycle. Really, you should be applauded. You have my mad respect. So do you have any closing thoughts or remarks?
I would say like if you are a Jehovah's Witness in it, maybe you're having some doubts, maybe you're kind of curious. I know it's terrifying to like look at apostate information, but court transcripts are not apostate. So please look at the ARC stuff. Another thing that was very helpful for me in the beginning was watching like ex-Mormon content because I realized how similar Jehovah's Witnesses and Mormons were. And it's like, just start looking at like maybe a cult that you know is a cult, and maybe that'll help you on the right path because it's not what they claim to be. And I'm like, it's okay to have doubts. It's okay to start a different journey for your life, your family's life, whatever it may be. Don't let like the guilt of leaving this organization you have been raised to think is the truth to stop you from looking at doubts you have. That's your gut telling you something. That's your body telling you something. Listen to that. As far as anybody who is, you know, thinking about disassociating, I actually just did a video on this recently. Um, there's a lot of people in the XJW world that likes to say that disassociating is playing by the Jehovah's Witness rules and it don't do that. It's giving them power, blah, blah, blah. My only advice is take a step back, look at your life. If you disassociate in your life, if you stay in and you just play by their rules by fading and you try to keep a semblance of relationship with family. I get it. It sucks to lose family. It's horrible. It's traumatic. But is that relationship you're trying to save really a relationship? Or is it based off of lies? That's what my brain said. They won't be my family if I'm not a Jehovah's Witness. I don't need that in my life. That's not unconditional love. That is conditional love. Do what's best for you because I have witnessed firsthand too many people who have left and tried to kind of play the half in, half out thing to try and keep family. And it just wrecks you more than it wrecks anyone else. For me, cutting my losses in a like you said, that blunt force trauma, cutting it right away was horrible, but we have been able to heal completely. We're still healing. I think it's going to be a lifelong thing that will have triggers that hit us, but we are able to move on. We were able to have a moment of just like this chapter of our life is closed. We are no longer a part of this cult. We get to heal. We get to create a life we want to create. And that's been so beautiful and so amazing to just have that weight off of our shoulders of like, what if they see us getting this? What if we do like, absolutely not. Like, no, you come by my house any holiday, my outside is insane. I am like, I'm enjoying it and I don't feel guilty about that.
Excellent. No, good. Yeah, you're being authentic. You're being authentic and you refuse to live in fear.
Yep.
Anything else that you'd like to add?
I would just add that, like, if you're a parent who is leaving, has left, trying to leave, as hard as it is, okay, we were raised where pretty much our parents were like us as children, were kind of always put on the back burner. I don't know if you remember this as a child, but we were always told, like, there may be a time that somebody threatens your life and we'll have to say, we'll see you in paradise kind of thing. So, like, their love for you is not conditional. And I think it was shown to us very early on. Flip the script, change the cycle, and do this for your child. Get out for your child. Do what is best for them, not what's best for you, not what's best for your parents or your siblings or your grandparents. It's horrible, but you will be able to look back in 20, 30, 40 years and know you put your child first and you've given them a life that like we never had as children. And that our children will get to feel that unconditional love always from us, which is what we sadly never had. So put your kids first. I know I don't want to be preachy about that. I don't want to be like, condescending, but please, like, if you're leaving with children, please put your children first. I'm serious. It's like, it's not their burden to bear. They deserve to just be able to live a normal life without these like feelings of heavy weight on them of like, oh, we can't tell our grandparents this, or we have to look this certain way. Like, no, kids shouldn't live with that. They have enough pressure on their shoulders with just regular kid stuff. Like, let the kids be first and foremost in your decision making, because to me, that's the most important thing. That was very long-winded, sorry, but like I'm very passionate about that. So,
Well, I can totally understand why. That's it. I don't even really think it's preachy. It's just you lived through it and, you saw how being a Jehovah's Witness affected you. I mean, you lived through it. How being a Jehovah's Witness affected you. And you didn't want that on your kids. You remember your school experiences and all the feelings and the confusion and the guilt and the shame, and you just didn't want to put your kids through that. So I don't think it comes off as preachy. I think you're just having been through it, you want your kids to experience the freedom. that you didn't have and that you know so many of us didn't have as kids. So I
Exactly.
think that's an understandable feeling. Thank you so much for sharing that. Thank you, Alissa, so much for being on the channel today. I really appreciate you coming on and being a powerful female voice in the XJW space, being an XJW activist and calling out Watchtower and for all their harmful practices. And I'm just glad that you and your family and your children have a brighter future ahead of you and can move past this despite some of the costs. Really proud of you. I know that other people that are watching this will be inspired by your story and proud of everything that you went through to protect your kids. And so thank you. Thank you for sharing your story. I will go ahead and leave a link to Alissa's YouTube at Home with Alissa. I will leave that in the bio of this video. If you like this interview, if you enjoyed this interview, please like and subscribe, share it. It helps get the word out and helps the channel grow. And again, thank you everybody for watching, and thank you, Alissa, for coming on Stop the Shunning.
Thank you again, Bethany. This was great.
Bye.